iMerit to put on this event. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Corona, who will be presenting today.
So good afternoon. My name is Guadalupe Corona, and I think this is probably one of the most important workshops to go to continue staying in a university of your choice and finding all the money out there that's going to help you be successful, and to help you think of all the ways you can minimize any potential debt you can acquire while you're pursuing your educational degree. Can I get an idea of how many of you are undergrads? Okay, how about graduate students? Okay, gives me kind of an idea of where the pools of money are at. So I know we're a little over 4, so I'm going to try to move it along. Again, I want to thank the Student Government Association and iMerit for sponsoring this event. I think it's really important that we do more of these on an ongoing basis and make sure you have access to as many scholarship opportunities that are out there. And I first want to start with just a brief overview of financial aid, because I think this is one of the areas where there's a lot of free money and sometimes areas get overlooked because you just don't know it's there. And so I just want to just do real briefly a little bit of financial aid. Obviously, the major form of aid for most U.S. domestic students is FAFSA, and it has a variety of opportunities for you for funding. And I always want to reiterate that FAFSA helps all students, because if a student has maybe a higher income or middle income and it may not give you some of the Pell Grant or some of the other eligibility, there's always low-income loans, and there's always work study. There's always other options that a school will offer you. And in addition to that, applying through FAFSA also allows you to be considered for other types of scholarships that are private donor scholarships at a university. So there's donors that'll give money and say, well, it doesn't matter if a student doesn't make that kind of certain income, but as long as it's done the FAFSA, they would qualify and be eligible for other pots of money. A donor can give money for left-handed people, or a donor can give money for someone who likes horseback riding, or someone that's good at writing poetry. I mean, there's all kinds of donor base. So always make sure you do your FAFSA, because it can open a window of all kinds of other grants for you. The state also has another grant called the Cal Grants. And this is where a lot of students miss out on a lot of money, because it's a two-part process. One is your FAFSA, and the other one is a grade verification form. So if you're an undergrad, this was done at your high school. So if you're a first-year student, the GPA that was calculated was based on your 10th and 11th grade courses. And if you qualified then, and you applied, and let's say you didn't transfer, you went to community college, then they will hold your award for 2 years. And if you didn't transfer at that point, then you had to kind of do an appeal or reapply again. So it's very technical, but it's a lot of free money for California residents. And then the last piece is scholarships in general, which is what we'll talk most of our meeting today. It's private donor scholarships or university scholarships, each with very different requirements depending on the donor. And the last piece is student loans. And I think that's where we talk about FAFSA as an opportunity to get low interest loans to help you pay for your education. And then there's some other alternative education loans. Any questions on this? Okay. So a few helpful hints on FAFSA. Make sure you do March 2nd deadline. That's also for Cal Grant for renewals or for new applicants for the competitive process. Make sure you use the IRS data retrieval tool that will be available on February 2nd. So if you do your taxes in January, your taxes will be available through IRS retrieval tool on February 2nd. So it's really important you know that. Make sure you select that you're interested in federal work study. If for some reason they allocate work study, there's always a wait list. So make sure that that's another option for you to work on campus. Our current work study is like $12 an hour, so it's pretty generous, and tend to be very flexible with your work schedule. You can work on various parts of the campus, a library with the teacher, and an office, so take advantage of that. And then it also allows you for low interest direct loans. And then it just provides a standard eligibility, like I mentioned, that could provide some other scholarship opportunities for you. So I think this is the part where I always want to make sure we share how to get ready for winnable scholarship opportunities. One is, just be aware it's a competitive process. So you may apply to 5, maybe you get 1, maybe you don't get any, maybe the 6th one you apply is the big one and you get it. So be aware that it's a competitive process. A lot of people apply. Sometimes they don't. You may be the only one and you get it right off the bat. So you never know who's in the pot of students. So always make sure you go with the best attitude, saying, you know, I'm going to put my application in and you may be the winner, and maybe get a couple at the same time. It does take time, so please be patient. It's a time-consuming process, but it's worth it, because you would think if you get a scholarship for $1,500 and you put a couple hours in, it's worth the money. Be realistic with your goals. You know, like I said, maybe think of a goal, how much money you like to go after, and then try to apply as many scholarships and see what you're able to get. Always, most scholarships will ask you for a copy of your most recent tax return. So always have one on file ready for that to be ready to be prepared. Do a monthly budget. I think most scholarships will now ask you for those two things, a monthly budget and your tax forms. And also work with your school site to get your cost of education budget. They'll tell you like what the budget looks like, and the bigger scholarships will ask you for that from your school. Here's I think this is probably the best checklist for you to have on how to best prepare for a scholarship process. Wonderful technology. We all have iPhones or some form of an iPhone that has an Outlook. You can plot all your dates on that and send yourself reminders. Typical most students will do a planner. You just highlight, your dates when things are due. But Outlook is great because it can send you reminders so you don't forget or overlook it. I would set aside some money for some very specific things like stamps and postage, maybe if you want a receipt of mailing that they received your packet, official transcripts. Those can add up for a few scholarships, but if you think about the adding up and the big scholarship is really worth it. Envelopes, usually the 9 by 12 inch, not 8.5 by 11, because usually packets are thick and you might have a hard time trying to push your stuff in there. They have a lot of things, requirements for you. Stationery, like a thank you. Little thank you note to make sure you thank the people who write your letter of recommendation. Printing, sometimes printers do run out of ink and it can add up as well. So make sure you put some money in there for your ink cartridges and your paper printing. And file folders. Maybe keeping a file for each scholarship. Keep a backup copy or PDF it, for yourself. So instead of file folders, maybe you have a Google Docs type online system where you can save a PDF of all your scholarship applications, and then you don't need paper files. References, I would say keep 3 to 5 people on the list that are good letter writers for you, that can write a good letter recommendation. I know I have my templates for my students, and then if I write them one, then it's easier for me to get them a second, third, fourth one. And actually they get better every time because I get to know them better as we spend more time together. And for you, in terms of putting together a packet for the people who are going to write you a letter recommendation, really important that you include a copy of the scholarship. If it has, especially highlight who it needs to be sent to and the name of the person if there's a name. And then also your CV or resume. So they can have an updated profile of who you are, how you're doing in school, your major, your GPA, if that's important in the application. Because then they know exactly what's expected of the letter they're writing on your behalf. And then tax returns again, and then the university budget. So these are things I think you need to have in a little box that would be really helpful for you. And then keep a little file folder, or you have an online system that can help you take care of these things on an ongoing basis. Any questions on this? Is this a helpful little tool? Okay. So what is important to do in the planning process is to plot the scholarship deadlines. Real big. This is the deadline, and I would always put a couple days before. Remember, mailing does take, the snail mail takes time. And so some places will ask you to postmark. I hadn't thought this, but also postmark, if it's on the East Coast, maybe different postmark for California. So be aware where you're sending your packet to. If it's a big scholarship, I would go ahead and pay extra for a receipt of mailing to make sure they received your packet, just so you have a little proof. Things do get lost in the mail sometimes. And then also when you're thinking about requesting documents, like letters of recommendation, people are working, they're doing other stuff, so give them at least 3 weeks to help you with that. Don't expect to have them come and do it the same day it's due. Some people will do it, but some people can't do it. And so it's kind of uncomfortable to put a good person that believes in you in a position like that. And then transcript takes at least 3 weeks. So, and I have a whole slide on transcripts from Alliant, so I'll help you understand that process. And then also always mail a little thank you note, to your references. Thank you for taking the time to write a letter. Or especially if you receive the scholarship, you really want to let them know that you want it. It's really important for us who write letters to know that you're getting the support you need. So for Alliant, for transcripts, you start looking at the cost, $10 versus rush processing, $20. That's a big difference in cost. There's always pre-planning will always work to your advantage. They do have overnight if you need it, but they won't do a PO box address. And so it's really important that you pay attention to your timelines and getting the documents you need to make sure your application is complete. And transcripts are usually a big part of that. This will be also on the Moodle so that you'll be able to download this and get hyperlinks and everything, so don't feel like you have to take notes on everything for you. We'll be taking care of this for you. When we talked about the budget, this is Alliant's budget. So when someone asks you, how much is it costing you to go to school? In that budget, they're looking at these items that are part of our federal regulations for financial aid, which includes your tuition and fees, any loan fees, books and supplies, room and board, transportation, and personal expenses. So it'd be good that you have one budget that you can work with, and work with financial aid because they can actually give you some of the actual numbers, the real numbers that you can work with. And then your personal budget, your transportation, room and board, some pay mortgage, some pay rent, some live on campus. Everyone's situation is a little different. Your student health insurance, and then your personal items. So any questions on that piece, on the budgets? No? Okay. So the scholarship application. Really, really important. Read the fine print. Because sometimes you may go through all the work of applying for a scholarship, you didn't qualify for it, and that's a lot of work to put into something. The other piece is, look at the fine print. Is it open to undergraduate students or graduate students? Most applications right off the top will tell you specifically if it's a high school student, college, undergrad, someone returning to work for a second degree or out of the workforce to a new job career. So they're very specific. Also pay attention, do you need to be enrolled full-time? Most scholarships prefer that you're enrolled full-time. They want to maximize the aid they give to students to be successful in completing their degrees. So pay attention to the enrollment criteria. And full-time for grad students obviously is different, prorated different per units than undergrad. So that's something that you can address with financial aid. What is their graduate unit requirement? So those are the really good ones to go, because if you're doing really well and they have a great relationship with you, they'll keep investing with you. Other areas that are very important in the scholarship application, if you can print or type it, it's always 100% better. Because if they can't read your phone number or your email or your information, it makes it really hard for them sometimes to even get a hold of you. So make sure that if you're able to print or type in blank ink, the best. Sometimes students use like color ink to print on an application. Don't do that, because when they actually make copies of it, it might not come out. So always use dark print. Make sure you read the instructions and you include every single item they say you need to include in your application. Most students, again, don't get a scholarship for an incomplete application. They forgot the transcript. They forgot one letter recommendation. They didn't submit some form they ask you to sign. Maybe usually it's an agreement form that some scholarships may require you to do a interview process, or they may require you to submit additional paperwork or participate in some community service along with their community members. So make sure that you have a complete application when you put it in that envelope and you put it in the mail. And then again, we talked about postmarked and then time zone. So very important little things to think about. Any questions on the application piece? And I think that's where the planner method is a good one, but I think the Outlook method is actually better, because you can send yourself reminders. Say, don't forget, next week you have your application due, or on this week, request a transcript. So if you have a good scholarship you want, then plan yourself 3 to 6 weeks before the deadline, the things you need to do to have that ready. Then it doesn't seem like it's like, oh my God, I have to get all this done in a week. And then you're rushing to get everything postmarked like 10 minutes before it's due. Not a good combination. Most students do it. The stress on it if you plan ahead. $1,500 scholarship, that's work study for a semester, 8 hours a week. So you don't have to work that semester, and then you focus on your practicum or your field experience. So instead of working, you're getting paid to be a full student in your experience without having to worry about having a job on the side. So it does pay off if you think about it that way. Or think about a summer project. You do it in the summer.
I just want to add something. I know when I fill out scholarships, that to make sure I answered every question they asked or fulfilled all the requirements, it's always good to, after you're done writing your essay, to then go back, look at the criteria, and make sure that you answered everything they asked. And if you're missing something, you can easily put it in. Or if you realized, oh, I don't meet this requirement, there's, you kind of save yourself some time and money. But
Then having to go through the whole process. Because it can get expensive. And I'll cover, you made a great entrance to the next piece for the essay. I think this is another piece where a lot of people miss the full application piece. They may have everything complete and have a wonderful essay, but they didn't pay attention. They had to answer a few questions that were not included in the essay. So as a person who's read scholarships on the other side, it says, is it like a cookie cut essay and you just like put the same essay to every application? So as someone who reads an essay, I would say someone didn't take the time to feel this was important enough to, customize the essay to the scholarship. So obviously some people would just pay more attention to those who did take the time to do that. So in the essay, before you submit any essay, especially if you had not submitted that particular essay before, always have someone else review it for you. Yeah, this is your best presentation of yourself, and the last thing you want is to have any like little errors like a spelling or grammar. Obviously not answering the question is a big part of it, but just a generic good essay is very important because it reflects not only you as a student, but the university. You're an Alliant university student applying for support from the community, and then you turn in an essay that has a lot of spelling and grammatical corrects, errors, and then I can say what kind of students are they producing there. So for you and your representation, and also as taking pride in our students, it's really good that you always have that second look. And maybe getting a group of friends to check each other's essays before you turn them in. Not only for that, but also did you answer the questions? Actually, that's even another big point here. I always tell students, tell your story. Don't be afraid to tell your story. People connect when you're real and genuine. And those are the essays that actually get the higher scoring points because people know that you really told your story. And many times you connect with the other person, and they're more likely to put you on a pile because they're like, I went through this. I was a foster child, and I knew how hard it was. I knew we took care of our grandma, and I helped with my siblings, and you really connect to the person on the other side, and that gives you extra points because they felt like, wow, this person's overcome all this adversity and still wants to continue with their career, and they will probably give you more points in that process. So be genuine, be real, especially really clear on what you have overcome, your persistence to continue with your dream, and how you're going to contribute to society in general. Those are the three things I usually look at. And then service. I know most people like to see service, but they don't like to see service in the way a lot of high school requirements are. Like you did 42 hours of this service at this site. They really want to see how that service made you a better person, made you think about the career choice you wanted to go into, and how your career can help society in general. So I know a lot of students, like more of the high school students, but I did 42 hours here. Well, I'd rather know how that service really impacted you in continuing the degree you want to make a difference in the community. So pay attention to that. Most common mistakes, some people will say 500 word limit, some 250 word limit, some 750, some 1,000. Pay attention to that, because some will just like put you in the pile. You got to understand that some people will get hundreds of thousands of essays, some 300, and then they have to get readers to then go through those piles and then pick the winners. So make sure you stick to the word limit because that can disqualify you from the poll. Edit your essay and make sure you always answer the prompt question, whichever it is. Any questions, suggestions, or any additions, or any of you done essays that could be helpful for the group? No?
We can always read samples of essays online. Reading through all this stuff.
So, it's always good because then you may think, oh, I didn't think about writing that in there. So that could be another good tool to use is maybe looking at other essays online because, sometimes you're like, oh, that's exactly what I was saying. Or I needed to add on my essay. So, the essay that always gets the most points is the one that's most genuine and tells the story. And that the reader can connect and say, wow, this student, I want to give the money to this student. And I've had some essays where I was like, I'll fight for that student and go, the GPA is not that high, but look at this and this and this. And that's like the student we want because no matter what they have, they're going to work hard to get there. And so, again, it all depends on the person on the other side, but you never know who you're going to connect with in that process and help you get through the winning stage, which we want. So I want to hear, I know there's a couple of students here who've gotten scholarships before, and like to see if they're willing to volunteer, what they did and what was beneficial in the process. Manuel, I'm looking at you. Can you share some of the scholarships you received? And
some of it's essay. You want me to tell which ones I got? I got a $4,000 scholarship for my heritage, which is from the Mexican Council. And pretty much it's an essay about the history of my family, that my father came from an indigenous family in Mexico. It was $4,000 for the semester, for the year, but it helped a lot. And then the essay, like she says, you gotta write it, and it has, I had 2 people look at it, so it comes out, not to say it's gonna come out perfect, but it comes out understandable and readable, so people can read it and see it. The other one was from school, transferring, and also good grades, like Caesar says, getting good grades gets you also. This school is very good about that. If grades go up, you get scholarships. Just gotta apply for them and be on top of it, that's it. Just, like Caesar says, there are deadlines, but well, like Guadalupe says, I had a planner too, and I put on the deadlines. I put a calendar in my room. You put all that, and you plan it, do your time management, you'll get them. I actually made, in 2 years I've been here, I haven't paid for school, pretty much, nothing. 1 year I went to do my taxes, I got $15,000 worth of scholarship. Where'd it go? I don't know, but pretty much
Tuition.
paid for it, yeah. Well, it's everything I needed, even a little bit of maintenance on my car, which I have a big car, but it helps. And when you don't go after this, it's just money flying to the system. So I would definitely recommend you go and get it. It's out there.
And when you mentioned the essay, we had an outside committee look at the essay, so it's always really proud to know that people are seeing the quality of our students. Sometimes these essays could also go for publication, so we want to make sure it's the best reflection of your work and the students that represent our university. So that's why it was like really important to make sure 1 or 2 people see it before it goes out, because you never know where it's going to end up at.
And also, like she said, there's also community service. When we do all that too, that goes into your essays, that goes into also seeing that you're also a prominent student doing something in the community.
And that essay had I think a 10 or 20 hour service requirement. They had to complete that as part of their scholarship community. So I think there's always, like I said, some scholarships will have something attached to it. But I always say, well, you're getting paid like $100 an hour for community service. How can you beat that? And you're still helping the community, and you're building a relationship where you never know could become a job and something you're doing that you enjoy and you love. So Alex, I know you had a couple of suggestions.
It's not all about grades too. It's just getting out there. And when I say get out there, I mean it's not just being active on campus, but being active in other organizations. There's so many different types of organizations you can be active in outside of Alliant that really help the community, that does a lot of service. And if you're on the board or if you're a part of that group, if you have membership, that looks really good in an application. Because it's showing that you're applying what you're learning at school and you're taking it further into the community.
And also, sometimes you'll meet someone there, they know a scholarship that you would qualify for, and I want you to apply and I'll write you the letter. Those are the community-based ones. And even some of those nonprofits have their own scholarship funds. They raise money for the community, so you might end up even getting a scholarship from them for your service. So it's always good to look at all the possibilities and all the different frameworks of where you can tap into funds. So let me share a couple links here that I have, since we had some student experience. When we think about scholarships in all the forms of who you are as a person. Because sometimes people just focus on the basics like the student enrolled and your career. For some of you, your parents through their jobs may have scholarship accessibility that you're not aware of. If any of your teachers, if any of your parents are teachers, through the teachers unions, they have scholarship funds for their sons or daughters. And so I think it's really important that you think about starting with home. Think of your parents and what affiliations they may have that you may be able to receive access to those scholarships because of your parents' work or their contribution to their field. So we know a lot of the veterans, there's a lot of local veteran scholarships for children of vets. And I'll have a couple links where I'll share that with you. Think of their employment of your parents, your churches, local communities that you volunteer at, like community councils. There's a lot of money out there that sometimes doesn't get tapped just because people don't know they can have accessibility to it. So think of first, you as a whole person and what accessibility you have for potential scholarships. I went through research other campuses and say, hey, let's see what they have for scholarships. And I found several that I think might be a good fit for our students, and some of them They ask you for an essay on a topic. Spokio is one of them. They have 3 generic topics. You pick one of them and submit your essay, and you can win $1,000, which is not bad. This one, BMO Capital, was looking at students who want to be in the business field but had a specific disability. They really wanted to support students with disabilities to get into the business profession. And that was like $10,000. So that was a pretty good deal. Let me see, there's a couple more in here. And these will all be hyperlinked in the PowerPoint, so you don't have to write them down. Here's a couple that are very generic, some for parents. If you have children, we have a lot more people going to school and raising their children. The Seroptimus Club, that's due December 1st, and I know Financial Aid is emailing. Thank you, Renee. That one is, they have up to $4,500 in awards, so they may range $500, $1,000, depending on how many applicants they get. They may give you more money, depending on the pool. And that one's due December 15. And so there's 2 of them in here, but I know students who receive these scholarships. In some of these cases, I have students who've been like 1 or 2 students who applied and they had money to give and no one else applied. So look at the detail. Some of them are very specific to women, some to parents. So just look at what the criteria is. If there's no criteria, then it means it's open. I would say apply, and you never know, you'll be awarded and supported by them. The most important link that I want to highlight is the San Diego Foundation, and I have a flyer for you. And so the internet's not really good in this room, so I'd rather just have you go to the link and check it out yourself. What I like about San Diego Foundation is they're becoming like a nice guru of the place to go for money for school. And they're really good at it. And so the first thing you need to do, and I hope all of you in this room do it, because you never know what you're going to get, is in January they start the open application process. You do 1 application for a pool of 100 scholarships. What I learned when I went to their website recently is they have 2 other links. So maximize one place, do it all. They have another listing for private donor scholarships. They're listed as separate scholarships. So when you go to the main site, there's 4 squares. The first one is the 1 application for 100 scholarships. The second square says separate scholarships. In there, they have another listing of scholarships that are separate from the 100. So 100 plus more. And then the third link says local scholarships. That one's a really long, I didn't count how many, but there's another long list in there. So you can go just to that place and get access to 3 different types of scholarship that have at least 30 listings each. I don't think you can get a better site than that. What I like about the foundation is they're very broad. They have parents, graduates, undergraduates, high school students, very specific donor, wishes. So I would say, if anywhere you want to start, would be this site. And it's due January, so you have winter break, you have time to prepare and plan. And so I gave you a flyer that clearly talks about what they can offer. We've had a student, I believe, has gotten about a couple $1,000s from Cox, from this site. A couple thousand. I don't remember what was the total amount last time I talked to her, but she's been doing really well just by this one. And she's the one that helped us kind of put some of the data for this kind of session. So if anything I say, start with this one. Very powerful site. A lot of free money. People want to help students, so you just got to go and get it. It all starts with you taking the time to apply. For Hispanic Latino students, obviously, as you're aware, the numbers keep growing across the country, and there's more and more donor base, more and more scholarship funds. So locally, we have MANA of San Diego. It's a professional Latina women's group. Their deadline's in January, and that's open. I believe they have the designation of female, 2.5 and above, undergrad and grad students. And then Univision has Es El Momento Scholarship. That one just came up. That's due November 15, I believe. I think it's next week. And that's another big chunk of money. Hispanic Scholarship Fund and Hispanic Fund have ongoing scholarships from corporate, a lot of corporate big dollars, at least $1,000 to $5,000. So here are some links, and we do have a scholarship guide in M1 that you can look at. And then there's a lot of links for webs. Obviously, most of us know fastweb.com, which has kind of been one of the more legitimate scholarship guides. But if anyone ever charges you money for scholarship, it's not legitimate. So don't ever pay to apply for a scholarship. That's a scam. That's how they're making money off of you. So never, 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 never apply for money. These are probably some of the more generic ongoing scholarship links that are out there. A lot of the local schools share this kind of common site. So actually, also don't forget to check our financial aid office. We have our scholarship guide list in there too of our donors. Most of them are due in March. Renee, am I correct? Our next deadline?
March 2nd is a typical deadline date and priority date.
And then we have a July.
Also, a list of scholarship links on the back of the California Student Commission brochure that you have, and there's a handout. On the back page, there's also approved by California Student Commission.
So money's out there. It's just not up to you to decide which ones you fit and go after it. Make yourself a list and stick to it. And then we also have Veteran Scholarship Guide in M1 for those of you veterans. They've also put another list for you. And we have scholarship books in M1 that you're more than happy to come, and if you want copies, we'll make copies for you. They're about a year old, but they're pretty consistent. Most people keep their ongoing scholarship as long as they raise their money. And then here's a couple other ones. GoCollege.com, School Soup, Scholar Site. Some of these sites also include like some tips for essays and letter writing, things like that. Sometimes if a scholarship doesn't have information, they also provide an example how to ask for information for a scholarship you're interested in. And then for international students, this is a really good site to study in any, like if you're looking for graduate programs. That one was a good listing of universities throughout the United States that offer scholarship aid to students who want to continue their education. So that's a good one to look at. The internationalscholarships.com. So any questions? Was this helpful? Yes.
If you apply for a scholarship, say it's a larger one and you don't get it, do you recommend, revamping whatever you turned in and reapplying, or directing your resources to applying to a completely different scholarship?
If it's one that you really want, I will call back and ask why you didn't get it. Was there something in the application, maybe you didn't meet the GPA, or was your application not complete? I always start with the basics, or did they get so many applicants that there was too big of a pool for you to be even kind of get into the pool they needed?
You just weren't selected.
But sometimes there may be some things that, if you really want it, you want to build a relationship with that other person on the other side and find out why you did it. Because sometimes it could be your application was not complete, or maybe you didn't meet something. Or they could say, apply earlier because, there's every organization functions differently. But if it's the one you want, I would keep applying. MANA, the scholarship, I applied for 3 years in a row and I was denied until my last year in college. And then I got 2 more in graduate school. And a lot of it was because my GPA wasn't meeting their GPA. And then once I met it, I got it. But then they realized that a lot of students who are working parents and going to school and they're active in the community can't have a high GPA because of all these demands. So they actually revamped their scholarship application and lowered the GPA to make sure they had more of a pool of applicants that could qualify that needed the extra funding. So I actually worked with the community, and I had even more people that I knew that I wrote letters of recommendation qualify for scholarships, because I said, you can't expect someone who's a parent, going to school full-time, working a job part-time, having these community responsibilities have a 4.0. It's just not going to happen. It's very unrealistic. And so I would say just keep, relationship. If that's the one you want, I would say keep trying and find out what was the reason you didn't get it. And if not, just keep trying, because you never know. The next time you may be on the better pool just because you kind of maybe wrote something. Always ask, because it could be the essay, it could be something. But if not, just keep trying, because you never know. You might get it the second or the third year. And if it's a nice big chunk of money, it's worth it. It's worth a try.
And try for as many as you'd like and as much energy as you have to try it for. And rather than just focus on one pebble of sand, stick your hand in the bucket and grab out a handful of sand.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to scholarships, whether these philosophy is just try for it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Because I had students who applied for,
Running low, different one, or try that one again.
Yeah.
I would say keep trying. Seroptimus, the year I had a student apply, they had maybe 2 or 3 students and they had money for 8. They're like, we would have given it to all 8 because we want to give the money out. But they only had 2 or 3 apply. And they even extended the deadline. So I would say try maybe that year, they get 50 applicants, maybe next year they get 2 or 3. You never know how lucky you're going to get and be in the right pool at the right time.
How we can have all the website that we can go through?
Oh, these were going to be put on Moodle, so that the whole PowerPoint, then you can just hyperlink and click and then it'll open up for you. So they're all hyperlinked on the PowerPoint. So you don't have to kind of type it in and you may get something else. It's going to be on Moodle.
Which part of the Moodle?
On the student portal. Any other questions? How about anyone who's done applications and can give us some tips? Anyone?
I applied recently. I received the email of the school, and it says the school has a fellowship completion. So right now I'm writing the essay. Essay should be in the 3 pages. Should include the timeline of my dissertation procedure and the final goal. So we have some.
The fellowships are really good because there are different types of fellowship. There's some that help you pay for your research while you're in school, like to help you pay the tools you need to do the research, or if you need to do data collection. Some of them will just give you a stipend to finish your degree. They're all different. So for graduate students, I think this is a good way to help pay towards the end of your education. There are fellowships that help you pay while you're in dissertation phase, so that you can focus on your writing and be able to get done quicker. So it all depends on which one you apply. But I think there's a lot of great pools of funding for specific majors and specific areas of need to help you get through your program. So it's always good to start with the fellowship because it helps you get through quicker and with less debt. Any other questions? Okay, well, if you have any feedback, please let me know. We always want to improve this and make it better and make it, where more students can get more support. But I think the most important is that you need to decide which ones are a good fit for you and go for them. I say apply, and you never know how much money you're going to get. I did this for my senior year of high school, and I got 9 scholarships. I didn't pay for nothing my first 2 years of college, just because I applied for the women's club. I applied to any club in my community. I remember one of the groups, it's a women's club in Lemon Grove. They gave me a check for $150. Right now that's not a lot of money. Back then it was for me. And it helped pay for books. And it was a group of ladies who got together once a week, and they did potluck lunch, and they raised money out of their potluck, and they wanted to help local kids go to college. So I'm very thankful for them because they helped me get through my first 2 years of school, them and among a couple other groups. But I say apply to every single one of them because you never know what you're going to get. And maybe they give you $150, maybe they know someone else and they have you apply for a $5,000 one. So you never know who can extend a helping hand. So thank you for coming. I wish you the most success on campus. You always can go to financial aid. So thank you, Renee, from my financial aid office for undergrad students, and helping us get you through the campus as much as we can with less amount of debt as possible. So have good luck. And if you need any help, I'm in M1. I'll be there to help you. Thank you.